Hey guys, today we're going to be talking to you about financial literacy for employees. I'm Ashely Vaughn. I'm a CPA and I'm a virtual CFO and controller at Summit CPA Group.
And I'm Jaime Wilson. I'm a senior accountant here at Summit.
Some of our objectives for today's presentation is we want to empower women and we want to empower you around money management. We want you to feel connected to the profit goals of the company. We want to create a clear understanding of how money flows in and out of the business. We also want to create a clear understanding of how every dollar earned is spent within the business. And we want to explain the importance of delegation. We're going to go into our first few objectives. We're going to talk to you guys about how money flows in and out of the business, and how every dollar earned is spent throughout in the business.
So in the first part of the presentation today, we're going to show you how $1 flows into the different business components of an organization. And then after that, we're going to go into the power and benefits of delegating work.
In this slide, we're going to explain to you guys how $1 revenue is broken into the different operating components of a company. Revenue and expenses are presented on a report called the profit and loss statement, P&L for short, and the P&L is broken down into sections. Sales is the first section, and sales, or it can also be called revenue, is the amount of money you receive from your client for the service you gave them. Cost of goods sold is the next section, and this section is the expense section, and it's expenses directly related to the service you provided. So it includes wages, but it only includes wages for employees that actually are billable to the client service, that work on the deliverable that you're going to get to the client. It doesn't include wages for admin support or accounting, bookkeepers and such like that. It also includes, if you're in a industry that manufactures things, it'll include the cost to manufacture goods, it'll include the labor to manufacture those goods, and it'll include the cost you paid to get those goods. The next section is gross profit, and your gross profit is just your profit or loss from whatever way it turns, from what the revenue that you received and the cost to get that revenue. And then the next section is overhead. Overhead is your expenses that are not related to production of that service to get that money, to get that dollar. And then your net profit. Your net profit is what's left over.
So in general, you want a breakdown of the different components of the company. So you want 55% of your revenue to be in your cost of goods sold, 30% of your revenue to be in overhead, leaving you a net profit of about 15%.
So when we're going to go into some more overhead expenses and COGS expenses. So when we talk about COG, like we explained, consists of the cost of your labor, the time you put in to get that deliverable to that client, and also some of the softwares that you use in order to get that deliverable to that client. Overhead costs are administrative costs, marketing, professional fees, HR, legal, gifts and contributions, any type of insurance that the company might pay, and training is a big one. Any training that you took before you were client facing will go into overhead cost to produce a 15% profit. Now, just because you have 15% profit does not mean that we have 15 pennies just sitting there waiting to be spent or waiting to be saved. Items that don't go on the P&L, but that the company still has to pay is profit share or bonuses at the end of the year, reinvestments into the business to help the business grow or scale, whatever we're doing at that moment. Loan repayments. Loan repayments do not hit the P&L. Income taxes also don't hit the P&L, and owner's draws don't hit the P&L. Owner's compensation and stuff doesn't hit the P&L. So Also, what we keep in our cash reserve does not hit the P&L. So our cash reserve, we like to keep between 10 and 30% of revenue in our cash reserve. So for our 100 pennies, let's just say we keep 10 of them. So that's 5 pennies that we have left over out of our net profit to spend on taxes, loan repayments, business reinvestments, draws, and bonus shares. Next, we're going to go into our delegation and the importance of it. How can you as an employee impact those numbers? How can we impact the bottom line? The biggest thing that you can do is to be more efficient with your time. And one of the best ways to be more efficient with your time is through the power of delegation. Jamie's going to start us off with the importance of delegation.
Yeah, so delegation offers a lot of ways to improve the bottom line. One example I like to think about is thinking about the cost of people being in the right places at the right time, right? Everyone makes a different amount in their salary. So if one person is making, if we're going back to that 100 pennies example, if one person is making 20 pennies where another person is making 10, and it takes them the same amount of time to do the same thing, you would want to make sure that you're delegating to that person that's making the 10 pennies versus the 20, because the bottom line in comparison to that dollar would be 80 versus 90.
That's a great example. It's just the power of delegating. And for people, if there's tasks that, oh, honestly, I don't have to do this task, and someone who is under you that is more than capable of doing this task and they have the capacity to do it, it's a great idea to delegate down to them.
Especially if it's something that maybe is a great learning opportunity that would stretch their brain a little bit, that you're super comfortable with and really capable of doing it. If you give it to somebody else, then you're able to grow their experience and kind of stretch them professionally and allow them to advance.
Yeah, I completely agree. I know here at Summit, one of the biggest things as a virtual CFO/controller, I delegate down to my seniors all the time. There are items that yes, I could do it, but it'll teach my seniors how to do things and it'll help them grow in their career. And honestly, delegating some of those stuff, they're harder things, but when you talk about delegating, one of the biggest reasons why I didn't want to delegate was I was like, oh, I don't want to put more on their plate. But every time that I've noticed I've delegated something, my seniors have been like, oh, this is great. This is such a great learning experience. I learned so much. Now I understand the process better. And that's really helped to get stuff off my plate so that I can do other things. So that's like one of the biggest, like for me, that was one of the biggest things, was just don't worry about, oh, I'm going to add too much to their plate. Like talk to them, see if they have the capacity to do it. One of the biggest things was it prevents burnout. If you're not delegating, you're going to get burnout, especially when there's people in your organization that are willing to help.
From the senior level too, so we're getting things from like the controllers and the CFO. So I would get something, for example, from Ashely, where she's trying to expand my experience and my knowledge. I also have the ability to delegate some of the more simpler tasks down to another level in our company. So if I'm able to delegate down to the entry level type of bookkeepers that we have, then I am able to take the more complicated work from Ashely and have the capacity and the ability to do that. So it frees me up from being burnout, and it also offers the ability to gain more experience and grow on a higher level.
Yeah, and I think a very big important thing when you do start delegating is to remember not to just drop it on their desk or in their inbox and say, all right, have fun. Like, this is what I like. It's important to have a conversation, at least for the first time. I know one of the biggest things is like, oh, I don't have time to delegate. It takes too much time to train. And you're right, it does. It will take time, but taking 20 minutes at the beginning of your delegation and just explaining to them the process and explaining to them the end result will help throughout their will help, and you won't have to continuously go back to them or not delegate anymore. So I think like having that, knowing what that final deliverable needs to look like is really important when you're delegating. And I would much rather in my seniors know when I'm delegating something, like if you have a hiccup, come and talk to me. Let's figure it out while you're in the process of doing it, as opposed to at the end doing something. So I know like that's one of the biggest things is just like when you're delegating for the first time or the first few times, yes, it's going to take a little longer, and it might even take you longer than it would have taken you to do that task. But once they have a clear understanding and they can do it on their own, you will have that free time.
And then I think that making sure once you have that free time and making sure the people that you're delegating to know that it's kind of an open door. If you run into issues, you have questions, it opens up several other things. You end up having more time and room for collaboration, and it's great for building trust with the people that you work with. Knowing that you can ask for help when you need it and having somewhere you can go when you don't know what to do is great within an organization, because you're building that trust and the relationship and the interpersonal things with the people that you're working with.
Yeah, and I also another great thing about delegating is you can play on people's individual strengths. I know that when I am not a key puncher. I hate updating spreadsheets. But there are people that love doing tasks like that. Like they enjoy that. So it's like, okay, well, I can do it. I don't enjoy it. But then there's so-and-so who enjoys doing it and has the capacity to do it and is willing to do it. So it's like, okay, well, play on their strength. Like every person in your organization has a unique skill set and talent. And so delegate the work that will help the overall efficiency, but also is something that maybe I'm not a big fan of doing, but they enjoy doing it. So it's kind of like a win-win for both of us. I get it off my plate and they get something on their plate that they actually enjoy. So I think that's a big thing. I think also like even after, let's say it's been a few weeks and you haven't really talked about it, following up on that delegation task is a good idea, just to kind of make sure they don't have any questions or if there's no outliers, and that it's continuously being done, or if they delegated it to someone that new person is doing it correctly, just to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks.
And then I also think that when you're looking and moving towards delegation, you want to make sure that there's a couple things in place. Just making sure that you have good checks and balances in place to make sure that if anything does go wrong or you run into any hiccups, there's a check where you're making sure that the work is still done correctly.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, and I know for me, especially, I'm a control freak. I like to have control over every aspect, and knowing that doing the job that I'm doing today, I can't keep things, I can't hoard things. Like I have to allow delegation, and I have to release control over things. And just from the little bit of stuff that I've started delegating, I feel like there's just like such a sigh of relief. I have time to actually be a good partner, strategic partner to my clients, and have those conversations that I need to have. And I don't have to worry about something not getting done because I've delegated it to people that I trust and they know I trust them, and it's made them better at their job. So I think delegation as a whole, it's just like one big circle and it always comes back around. You can tell that who delegates well and who doesn't. But it always comes back around, and I feel like it allows for your organization to just be more cohesive. And you empower other employees, you empower your coworkers, you actually don't feel like you're on this island by yourself. I know working remote, sometimes you can feel like, oh, there's no one to delegate to, or I'm by myself. But allowing yourself to delegate and get out of your own head is really important. And like I said, delegation can completely shape an organization. Like it can align so much, and just making sure that the right people are doing the correct task at the end of the day. And I think that's what's important, and that is what's going to affect your bottom line. Thank you guys so much for allowing us to present this to you today. And we hope you all feel empowered and have a great understanding and a more clearer understanding of how you can affect the bottom line of your organization. Thank you.
Thank you.